Hello everyone, my name is Paul Stevers and today I'm going to provide you with an overview of the topic of this session, which is growing investments in the algae industry. Before I do, I'd like to provide you with some background about myself. Over 25 years ago, I was chief engineer in a technology startup in Pennsylvania, and while doing so, I was part of a team that raised over $10 million. Then we sold our business to a large corporation, and then I moved to Bermuda. While I was there, I became very concerned about the growth of extremism and founded a nonprofit to support orphanages in Afghanistan, and also started a business there. After several years of working in Afghanistan, I moved to Toronto and started a business called Renewables Group. While operating this business, I started a project with two universities in Toronto to introduce companies with innovative climate solutions to investment managers that work for very high net worth individuals who publicly express concern about climate change. While doing so, I learned that there was rapid technology development in several complementary areas, including growing algae on a large scale. Therefore, our team launched a new company called Integrated ClimateTech, or ClimateTech for short. After I learned about Global Algae Innovations won the Carbon X Prize, our team started researching algae companies and their respective investors. As a result, I now feel this industry is poised to grow very large, perhaps even bigger than the hydrogen industry. Now I'd like to provide you with an overview of investments in the algae industry. According to All About Algae, more than $1 billion has been invested by the federal government and private investors in the algae industry in the U.S. Several years ago, there was considerable investment in algae to grow renewable fuels, but this declined when fossil fuel prices declined. However, just as what happened in the hydrogen sector, algae technologies continue to improve, and now investments in the algae industry are growing again. For example, an online business information platform called Crunchbase has listings of over $145 million in recent investments in the algae-related companies. Since Crunchbase does not have a complete record of all investments, I expect there's been considerably more than $145 million in investment in algae-related companies in the last few years. Shown here are some notable recent sets of investments in the algae-related companies listed in Crunchbase. The first set is $42.5 million in two investment rounds in Mar Renewables, then $26.7 million in Brilliant Planet, then $17.6 million in AlgaeNet. Next is $12.3 million in CarbonWorks, and last is $11.3 million in Provectus Algae. When I reviewed the data in Crunchbase, it appears that successive investments in startup algae companies were often occurring in the typical time range for these types of companies. For example, according to Crunchbase, Brilliant Planet received this set of funding starting with the most recent round. About $12 million in Series A round in April for this year, about $6.5 million grant funding in 2019, $4 million in seed round funding in 2018, $4.2 million in seed round funding in 2017, for a total of $26.7 million. It should be noted that several investment firms often participate in a major funding round. For example, according to Crunchbase, the following firms participated in the $12 million Series A round for Brilliant Planet: Toyota Ventures, S2G Ventures, Pegasus Tech Ventures, Hatch Blue Limited, Grantham Foundation, Future Positive Capital, Alpha Impact Investment Management Partners. Bill Reichert from Pegasus and I will have a conversation about his thoughts on this investment and the algae industry later on. While researching investors who have invested in the algae industry, I observed that some very forward-looking investment firms have decided to invest in this industry. For example, Pegasus Tech Ventures, which helps accelerate scale-up of startups by connecting them with global corporations. Third Nature Investments is building an inclusive investment platform centered on building a new balance between Earth's natural systems and human activity. Starlight Ventures invest in early who they feel are the brightest entrepreneurs using science and technology breakthroughs to achieve progress at scale. Lastly, Big Ideas Ventures is focused on solving the world's biggest challenges by supporting the world's best entrepreneurs, engineers, and scientists. Therefore, these investors do not just invest in any idea they think will provide a good return on investment. Instead, they seem to focus on making a significant positive impact as well as making a profit. In addition, it was encouraging to learn that several billionaires have recently invested in the algae industry. For example, Jeremy Grantham, who founded Grantham Foundation for the Protection of the Environment, which has recently invested in the Brilliant Planet. Chris Sacca, who founded Lower Carbon Capital, which has recently invested in Running Tide. And lastly, Jeff Bezos, who founded the Bezos Earth Fund, has provided funding for scaling up seaweed farming to the Worldwide Fund for Nature, which was formerly called the World Wildlife Fund. I expect that if these organizations receiving this funding demonstrate substantial positive results, they will receive considerable more funding from these billionaires. The algae industry is expected to grow substantially over the next several years. For example, given below are some recent market studies forecasting this growth. The first one is by Vantage Market Research, which is forecasting that the algae market for food and nutrition-related products is expected to grow at a compound annual rate of over 10.5% between 2022 and 2028, reaching about $36 billion by the end of this time period. The second market studies reported by Bloomberg is forecasting a much larger market for all algae-related products. Bloomberg indicated that, according to the Center for Climate and Energy Solutions, algae products in food, feed, fuel, and chemical sectors could have a combined annual market of over $320 billion in 2030. Investment opportunities in algae have increased due to rapid development of technologies in several complementary areas that is enabling algae production to be combined with other value-added processes. For example, shown here is a simplified schematic of one combination of technologies that combines algae production with a biomass plant, indoor farm, and fish farm. The flue gas from the biomass plant provides carbon dioxide to the algae facility. The algae produced is then fed to the fish. The fish waste is then fed to the plants growing in the indoor farm. As well, CO2 leaving the algae tanks can be fed into the indoor farm to accelerate plant growth. The biomass power plant also produces biochar that is used as a soil additive to grow more food. There have been several recent positive news reports and documentaries that outline how algae can help address the climate change and global food crisis. Shown here are some examples. The first is the report by About Global Algae Innovations winning one of the $1 million X prizes for carbon removal, which was funded by Elon Musk. I think this encouraged many investors who are interested in investing in climate solutions to take a second look at algae. Due to the current global food crisis, I expect that reports that algae farms could help increase global food production by 50% by 2050 was also very noteworthy for investors. In addition, there are several reports like the one in Quartz that talk about how algae can help combat climate change. Finally, there are some positive documentaries like the one by Deutsche Welle about why the world needs more algae and not less. I think the algae industry can leverage this positive news to create substantially more investor interest in algae-related companies. In addition, as a result of the rapid advancements in associated technologies, the algae industry has the capability to rapidly scale up to help solve both the climate change and global food crisis. If investors did provide the needed funding for a large scale up of the algae industry, I expect they would be rewarded with considerable returns on their respective investments. At the same time, there is a steady stream of headline news about these crises and some good news about algae, but this news is not getting the wide coverage it should get. As a result, I feel that there is now an opportunity for the algae industry to work together to create much more awareness amongst investors about what algae can do for the world, and that investing in algae is going to be very profitable. Given below are some activities the algae industry can do to increase investor interest and as a result increase investments in algae-related companies. First is to create short positive videos about algae that can be shared on social media as well as inserted in articles published in media outlets. Next is to create many short positive stories that include links to existing detailed articles and documentaries about algae and share them in these ways. First, submit them to the hundreds of media organizations that are part of the Covering Climate Now. Second, submit them to news outlets that are focused on investors or policymakers. Lastly, post these short stories on social media. In conclusion, from my research, there appears to be a resurgence of investor interest in investments in the algae industry. As well, there are some very forward-looking investment firms that are investing in algae. In addition, I have noticed that multiple billionaires have recently invested in the algae industry, which I think can be very fortunate for a company that receives this investment, since a billionaire can quickly make an additional investment if he or she wants to do so. Due to a combination of major factors including advances in algae-related technologies, a climate change crisis, and the global food crisis, there is an opportunity to create substantially more investor interest in algae. As a result, I think the algae industry has an opportunity to work together to substantially increase this interest and investments in algae. If some of you want to explore this opportunity, I would be pleased to discuss this further. Thank you for taking the time to listen to my presentation. Next, we plan to place some pre-recorded videos of the conversations that I've had with some investors who have invested in the algae industry.